All right, shalom, shalom. Right, most high willing, everybody's feeling decent this morning, man. Continuing to endure. Oh, shalak. Oh, don't worry about it. Most high willing, everybody's feeling decent this morning. Most high willing, everybody's continuing to endure, man. Right, as the days wax worse and worse. Right, let's go ahead and kick it off with the book of Colossians, chapter 3, and verse 17.
This is the book of Colossians, chapter 3, verse number 17. And whatsoever ye do in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord Yahweh Shai, giving thanks to Yahweh and the Father by him.
Right, so everything we do in word or deed, we do it all in the name of the Lord Yahweh Shai, giving thanks to the Most High God Yahweh. That's why they say, call Allah Yahweh by Shema Mashiach, woman like Yahweh Shai. That's all honor and glory to the Most High God through His Son, who the Word newly called Jesus Christ. Right. So today, man, SOZ bread in the morning, right? The bread that we're eating up this morning, right? Once again, this whole thing, the whole thing about bread in the morning that we're going into is dealing with the precepts and these different things that brothers and sisters may read and may see, and they're unable to explain or unable to understand them. And instead of them asking the question of why this, or getting the understanding of it, a lot of times brothers and sisters, they decide not to, because they're in fear of being told, they're going off, or whatever it may be. So through the Spirit of the Lord, man, we are addressing these things in the morning. Hopefully, at least 2 or 3 times a week we can address these different things. So today on SOZ bread in the morning, we're going to go into Timothy, right? We're going to go into Timothy. And was Timothy, a Greek, man? Was he a Greek? Was he an Israelite? Was he not Israelite by blood? Was he a real, blood ethnic Gentile? Right? That's the question. Right? So let's go ahead and kick it off. Let's go to the book of Acts, chapter 16 and verse 1.
This is the book of Acts, chapter 16, and verse number 1. Then came he to Debris and Lystra, and behold, a certain disciple was there named Timotheus, the son of a certain woman, which was a Jewess and believed, but his father was a Greek.
So first I would ask you, a question, right? If she's a Jewess and believed, right, were Jew women raised up by their fathers to be able to marry a heathen man? Right? Is it in our law and our custom for a woman who was raised up in the law of the Most High God, right? And her mother, it tells you his grandmother, her mother, was a believer as well. Is it our custom to literally allow our daughters to be married unto a heathen? No, it's not. It's not our custom at all, right? That wouldn't happen. So she couldn't be a woman that believed and actually marry a heathen man, right? It just wouldn't happen. So it says his father was a Greek. So real quick, let's go to Acts 22 and verse 27. Let's get some understanding on something, right? Our people have went by many names throughout the many different captivities we've been in. But more importantly, right, that term Greek is specific and unique when we look at what that word actually means. But before we get that, let's see what Paul referred to himself as, right?
This is the book of Acts, chapter 22, and verse number 26.
Start at 26, yeah,
And it reads,
Start at
when
25.
25, and it reads, and as they bound him with thongs, Paul said unto the centurion that stood by, is it lawful for you to scourge a man that is a Roman and uncondemned?
Right, so Paul is calling himself a Roman. Paul is saying, hey, is it lawful for you to scourge a man that is a Roman? He's talking about himself. And we're gonna show that he's talking about himself. Continue to read on.
When the centurion heard that, he went and told the chief captain, saying, take heed what thou doest, for this man is a Roman. Then the chief captain came and said unto him, tell me, art thou a Roman? He said, yea.
Right. But is Paul a blood descendancy of Rome? Is Paul actually a man that is from Rome? But right here, Paul is referring to himself as a Roman, right? Now, we're going to show why people are referred to as Greeks through the Spirit of the Lord. We're going to go into a little bit of history of who lived where. We're going to go into the history of the actions of a man that called himself a Greek. We're going to go into all these different things through the Spirit of the Lord. You know, it won't be a long class, but we want to give a clear, concise understanding of what this means, Timotheus' father being a Greek, and how we understand that he's still an Israelite by blood, right? So is Paul, for those that may be watching this video that don't know, right? Paul is an Israelite by blood, right? Go to Romans 11:1.
God. This is the book of Romans, chapter 11 and verse number 1. And it reads, I say then, have God cast away his people? God forbid. For I also am an Israelite of the seed of Abraham of the tribe of Benjamin.
Right. So Paul is an Israelite of the seed of Abraham of the tribe of Benjamin. But we see he called and referred to himself as a Roman, right? Now, we're going to get deeper into this. So let's go back to Acts chapter 16, right? And verse 1 again.
Acts 16 and verse number 1. Then came he to Debris and Lystra, and behold, a certain disciple was there named Timotheus, the son of a certain woman, which was a Jewess and believed, but his father was a Greek.
Right. So his father was a Greek. Now I'm going to share my screen, right? Right. So right here, I have it pulled up in the Blue Letter Bible, right? And I'll go backwards just so I can be thorough and so brothers can, so I can be transparent, right? So this is the words. This is Acts 16 and verse 1, right? His father was a Greek, right? The word here is Helen, right? When we get the definition of Helen, I'll play it.
Strong's G 1672, Helen.
Right, and we're gonna see that this definition by no definition is determined that this word is talking about a actual literal descendant of Greek, right? A Greek either by nationality, whether native of the mainland or of the Greek island or colonies. So that's talking about if you lived or you were born in the mainland of Greece, right? Or if any of its colonies. Anybody that knows anything knows the Greek province and the Greek colonies were very vast, right? That's why the term Hellenization came into play, right? And we'll pull that up as well. Then it says, in a wider sense, the name embraces all nations, not Jews, that made the language, custom, learning of Greeks their own. The primary reference is to difference of religion and worship. Now, these people are very slick. They put the term not Jews. We know for a fact, right, that they add that in there because of it obliterates their doctrine, right? We know for a fact that it obliterates their doctrine. That's why we use the blue letter and coincide with the precepts. Because it's not all nation, not Jews, right? First of all, the Jews are not a nation. That's how you know that this right here is not the actual definition. It's what they've written in, because the Jews are not a nation, right? Israel is a nation. And it doesn't say not the Israelites. It says not the Jews. But see, Christians call the Jews and the Israelites the same. When the Jews and the Israelites are not the same, well, they are, but they're not all Israelites are not Jews. The nation is Israel. So we understand that Christians, they don't identify the separation between the Jews and the Israelites. They look at them as their as all Israelites are Jews. So we're going to read it again. A wider sense, a name embraces all nations, right? I'm not even reading that part. That made the language, custom, and learnings of Greek their own. The primary reference is the difference of religion and worship. Now we're going to find out through the precepts, right? We're going to find out through the precepts if this fits what Israelites were doing, right? Making the customs, the learnings of the Greeks their own. This is what it's referring to the definition of a Greek as. Let's find out if the Israelites did the same thing like Timotheus' father, right? Go to the book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 12 and verse 1.
This is the book of First Corinthians, chapter 12, and verse number 1. Now, concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you ignorant. Ye know that ye were Gentiles carried away unto these dumb idols, even as ye were led.
Right? Dumb idols. Going into idolatry. Right? Go to the book of Acts, chapter 14 and verse 1. Let's get some understanding. Let's get a little deeper into this. Acts 14 and verse 1.
Acts chapter 14 and verse number 1. And it came to pass in Iconium, and they went both together into the synagogue of the Jews, and so spake that a great multitude both of the Jews and also of the Greeks believed.
The Jews
But
and the Greeks believed. That's the point that I wanted from there, right? Jump that. So this is in reference to Jews and Greeks. Let's see where they were at, right? Go to verse 6.
verse number 6, they were aware of it and fled unto Lysteria and Debris, cities of Laconia, and unto the region that lieth round about.
Now understand, they're in Derbe and Lyconia, and Lystria and Derbe, right? Cities of Lyconia, right? Which is where one of the cities where Timotheus's father was from, where Timothy was from, right? Understand that we lining this up to show the definition of Helen, and we're lining it up to see what our people who are referenced as Greeks were doing, right? In the very same city that Timotheus is from and his father is from, right? Read on.
Verse number 7. And there they preached the gospel. And there sat a certain man of Lysteria, impotent in his feet, being a crippled from his mother's womb, who never had walked. The same heard Paul speak, who steadfast beholding him, and perceiving that he had faith to be healed, said with a loud voice, Stand upright on thy feet. And he leaped and walked.
Mm-hmm.
And when the people saw that Paul had done what Paul had done, they lifted up their voice, saying, In the speech of Lycurian, the gods are come down to us in the likeness of men. And they
Mm-hmm.
called Barnabas Jupiter and Paul Marcius, because he was the chief speaker.
Right. So this is showing you that our people were into idolatry and the Greco-Roman religion. Now, I said Greco-Roman religion, and I'm going to go to history to show what I mean by that, right? The Greek religion and the way the Greeks worshiped gods and the way the Romans worshiped gods were actually the same. They had the same gods with different names, right? They were literally the same gods, different names, the same way of worshiping. All it was is the Roman name, right? But exactly the same gods. And I'm going to prove it. But nonetheless, exactly the same gods. Jupiter is literally Zeus, right? You just have to know. Jupiter is Zeus, right? Mercury, I believe Mercury was whichever god it was, one of those Greek gods, right? They're literally the same god, right? So a lot of times, and we're gonna show you how this happened, right? How the Greeks that were that went into the Roman conquest assimilated into the beliefs of the Romans, right? Which were the same beliefs, just a different name, right? So read down a little bit more.
Then the priests of Jupiter, which was before their city, brought oxen and grand lands unto the gates, and would have done sacrifice with the people. Which, when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard of, they rent their clothes and ran in among the people, crying out and saying, Sirs, why do ye these things? We also are men of like passions with you, and preach unto you that ye should turn from these vanities unto the living God, which made heaven and earth and the seas and all things are therein.
So literally, they were worshiping Greek and Roman gods, right? In Lystra and in Derbe, the same place where Paul's father is said to be a Greek, which we understand that word is Helen, which we understand that the definition of that are people that are taking on the Greek religions and customs, right? As we're seeing them do right now, right? So let's pull up. I'm pulling up my screen. Let's get some history. Right. First, let's pull up where Lystra and Derbe are. Right. Lystra and Derbe. Lystra and Derbe were cities in the ancient region of Lycaonia, right? Which we read in the Bible. That's what it said, right? The cities of Lycaonia, located in South Central Asia Minor, which is now part of modern day Turkey. Both cities were in Roman province of Galatia, and Lystra was roughly 60 miles northwest of Derbe, right? Lystra, located near the modern village of Hottensie, Lystra was a market town and a hometown of Timothy, a companion of Apostle Paul, right? Plain. Now, we understand what was going on in Lystra. We hear them referencing Jupiter and Mercury. We hear about them sacrificing unto idols, ways of the Greeks. And we understand that that word Greek is Helen, which is dealing with people doing the ways of the Greeks. Now, let's look at this. Jupiter and Zeus are essentially the same god, but they belong to two different cultures. Zeus is the Greek version, and Jupiter is the Roman version. Jupiter is the Roman adaptation of Zeus, and while they share many roles and symbols, they are alike the god of the sky and thunder. There are some culture differences in their emphasis, with Jupiter having a stronger connection with the Roman state. They're the same god. They're the same guy. Even when they had a TV show, it was brief on Netflix, and they had a guy named Jupiter, and he was literally Zeus. It was called Jupiter something. I forgot what it was called, right? And he was literally Zeus. They're the same guy, right? So we have to understand that it was still the same culture, just shifted. So if you were a Greek living in you were Hellenized Greek, and you were around during the time of the Roman conquest, right? The Byzantine Empire, right? Then you would start to shift because it was still the same mythology. But over years of more Roman terms being utilized, it becomes more natural to you, right? So let's real quick, let's get an account on our people assimilated into Greek. Right, and then let's get an account of the Romans taking over from the Greeks and how the Romans operated as doing so. So let's go to First Maccabees 1:41.
This is the book of First Maccabees, chapter 1 and verse number 41. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and everyone should leave his law. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath.
Right. We can read deeper on that, but for the sake of time, right? Brothers got to get to the plantation, right? That's enough. That's enough. It said many of the Israelites consulted to his religion and sacrificed unto idols. Right. We just read about Israelites in Lystra, right, ready to sacrifice unto Jupiter and Mercury, right? We were just reading about that. This is what they did. This is how they became Greeks. So this is what Timothy's father was. His mother married him, and he turned out to be wicked. Somebody who assimilated into the Greek culture, but she still continued to believe. And she raised Timothy to believe. Because the mother is the one that raises the ones that teach the children, right? Which is why in the time of the Persian Medo captivity, the Israelites had to put those strange women away because those strange women weren't teaching the children the Jews' ways. Right here, we have the opposite. We have the mother teaching the child the ways of the Jews, the ways of the Most High God. And the father going into idolatry, being a Greek. Right? Go to 2 Maccabees 6 and 6.
God, this is the book of Second Maccabees, chapter 6, and verse number 6. And it reads, neither was it lawful for a man to keep Sabbath days or ancient feasts, or to profess himself at all to be a Jew.
Right? So there was a time when we weren't even allowed to profess ourselves to be a Jew. So what do we have to call ourselves? That's how you know the Blue Letter Bible is being a liar, when it says all nations, not Jews. When the Jews weren't even allowed to profess themselves to be a Jew. So what would they profess themselves as in the time of the Greek Hellenization period? Let's look at this real quick. Take a quick sidebar, right? Right? How big was the Greek province during colonization? The term Greek province is an anachronism for the Hellenistic period, right? That word Hellen. Hellenization was a sociocultural phenomenon involving the spread of the Greek culture, language, and influence across the vast geographical area following the conquest of Alexander the Great, rather than a single defined province. So I used the wrong word. It was way bigger than a province, right? The Hellenistic world in 323 to 31 BC encompassed an enormous territory far larger than the Greek mainland. This area was ruled by various successors and kingdoms. Diadochi, its size and political boundaries were consistently shifting, meaning it was consistently growing, right? Consistently growing, right? So here we have the Greek mainland, Hellas, right? Anatolia, Asia Minor, the Near East, the Seleucid Empire, Egypt, the Ptolemaic Kingdom, and Central and South Asia. The Greek influence extended into modern-day Afghanistan, Pakistan, Northwest India, through the Greco-Bactrian and Indo-Greek kingdoms. The Black Sea region, areas like the Kingdom of Bosporus, featured a fusion of Greek and local customs. Look at this, man. It was huge. And you're telling me the Jews, who weren't allowed to assimilate themselves as Greeks, didn't call themselves Greeks? Or weren't called Greeks, but they weren't allowed to call themselves Jews? No, of course they were. And that was in the case of Timotheus' father, who was living in a place that had lots of Israelites, right? Matter of fact, I think I have that pulled up, right? Here it is. During the time of Paul, there was a Jewish community in Lystra, though the city was primarily a mix of native Lysonians and Roman colonists. The Jewish population had a synagogue where they gathered, which were likely where Paul initially preached about Yahushua. However, the city's religious landscape was dominated by polytheistic worship of Greek and Roman gods. And this is where Timothy lived. But they're understating how many, it was way more than a Jewish quote unquote community. There was a vast amount of Jews living in this community. For the sake of time, I can't go into pulling up the different transcripts showing you this, but most High willing in the future I can, right? I mean, a lot, right? That's why Timotheus' mother was there too. That's why her grandmother was there too. That's why Paul was there. Paul wasn't there because there was a small amount of Jews there, right? And we're seeing the actions of their behavior, why they're being referenced as a Jew versus Timotheus' mother being referenced as a Jewess. I mean, referenced as a Greek versus Timotheus' mother being referenced as a Jewess, right? So now let's go to 1 Maccabees chapter 8 and verse 1, and then jump down to 11. Let's get the 8 and 1 to get who they're talking about.
This is the book of 1 Maccabees, chapter 8, and verse number 1. Now Judas had heard of the fame of the Romans, that they were mighty and valiant men, and such as would lovingly accept all that joined themselves unto them, and made a league of enmity with all that came unto them.
Right. So let's talk about the Romans. The context is the Romans. Right. Go ahead.
Jump down to verse number 11. It was told him besides how they destroyed and brought under their dominion all other kingdoms and isles that at any time resisted them.
Right. Read on.
But with their friends and such has relied upon them that kept enmity, and that they had conquest kingdoms both far and nigh, insomuch as all that heard of their name were afraid of them. Also, that whom they would help to a kingdom, those reign, and who again they displace, finally, that they were greatly exalted.
Right. So if you were to accept their league and their friendship, you were greatly exalted. Right. If you didn't, hey, they destroyed you. You had two options dealing with the Romans during the time of the Greeks, right? When they came in destroying everybody, you either made them a friend or you were destroyed. That was your only two options, right? The difference between the Romans and the Greeks is they allowed you to keep somewhat of your way of doing things. The Greeks, hey, they didn't allow you to do anything. You had to do what they did, how they did it, and call it their name.
Right.
The Romans allowed you to still keep some of you. That's why we were able to have synagogues during the time of the Roman rulership. And we're going to read how that happened. We're going to read the league that was made right now. The understanding that was given right now. Right, read on.
Con. Right? Verse number 14. Yet for all this, none of them wore a crown or was clothed in purple to be magnified thereby. Moreover, how they had made for themselves a senate house, wherein 320 men sat in council daily, consulting always for the people, to the end that they might be well ordered, and that they committed their government to one man every year, who ruled over all their country, and that all were obedient to the one, and that there was neither envy nor emulations among them.
Mm-hmm.
It says, in consideration of these things, Judas chose Eupholius, the son of John, the son of Achas, and Jason, the son of Eleazar, and sent them to Rome, and made a league of enmity and confederacy with them. It says, verse number 18, and to entreat them that they would take the yoke from them, for they saw that the kingdom of the Grecians did oppress Israel with servitude.
You see, so this is how the league was made between the two. The Romans knew of the power of the Israelites. They understood it. They rather not war with the Romans, and they understood how the Greeks had the Israelites in servitude and how they oppressed them. So what they did was they said, "Well, look, we about to win this. We about to win over them. So make a league with us. You will still be able to worship your gods and do your things. We'll be friends, but you won't be fighting against us. Agree that you're not going to fight against us, and we will set you free in some retrospect from the oppression of the Grecians when we destroy them." But of course, you still had certain men that even in the time of the Romans, they still were calling themselves Greeks because that's what they assimilated themselves into. Right? Go ahead.
They they went therefore to Rome, which was a very great journey, and came into the Senate, where they spake and said, Judas Maccabeus with his brethren and the people of the Jews has sent us unto you to make a confederacy in peace with you, that we might be registered your confederacies and friends. So that matter pleased the Romans well. And this is the copy of the epistle which the Senate wrote back again in tables of brass and sent to Jerusalem, that they might have by them a memorial of peace and confederacy.
Right now, jump to verse 24.
Verse number 24. And it reads, if there come first any war upon the Romans or any of their confederates throughout all their dominion, the people of the Jews should help them at the time shall be appointed with all their heart.
Right? So it says, so if there be a war, the Israelites are having to agree that there be a war. This is how you ended up, right, with centurions of the Italic band. The Israelites are agreeing right now that they would join unto the Roman army to help them in times of war. Cornelius, This is how you came. This is how you got Roman centurions. This is the agreement that was made in order for them to be able to worship in peace. This was it. This is the shifting over of the Greeks to the Romans, but nonetheless, the Greeks did not make those. The Romans did not make those who were calling themselves Greeks stop calling themselves Greeks. They didn't care about that. What they cared about was, we rule over you, and in the time of war, you help us. Go to verse 29.
Verse number 29. According to these articles, did the Romans make a covenant with the people of the Jews?
Playing upon tables. So this is how it happened, right? This is how it happened. So I'm going to share my screen one more time. So no, Timotheus was not and is not a heathen. Right? His father was in fact an Israelite. One word versus a whole versus all the precepts in the history. Come on, man. What we doing? Right? So this is right here. After the Greco-Roman Wars, many Greeks did not entirely abandon their culture, but rather integrated it with Roman culture, a process that is often called Hellenization. Following the Rome's conquest, the Eastern Roman Empire evolved into the Byzantine Empire, which was Greek in language and culture, but self-identified as Roman. This was a fusion where Roman political and legal structures were overlaid on a predominantly Greek-speaking Hellenistic culture. So just because it was in the time of Rome, just because it was the Roman rulership, did not change the culture, which was Greek. And that's the reason why Timotheus' father in the time of the Romans was still identified as a Greek, but word being Hellen. And we just, through the spirit and through the history, shown how that happened. So, most high willing, somebody was edified or will be on the coming days as this video plays across YouTube. Comment, like, share, subscribe, right? That the algorithm may boost and the video may be shown more for more edification across Israel. Love y'all until next time. Shalom.
Shalom.